to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll begin the meeting with a moment of silence. This meeting is being recorded and televised by WHCA. I'd like a motion to approve bill and payroll warrants.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I'd like a motion to accept correspondence in the read file.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Public forum. Now is the time for anyone to ask to speak if they want to talk on something that's not on the agenda. Approval of meeting minutes, open session, May 15th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And the open session on August 22nd, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now we need to go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Exception 21A1, Section 21A1, to discuss the physical condition or mental health rather than professional competence of a police department employee. We'll also be going into a second executive session after that one, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, second exception, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
Okay, voice vote. Sean?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
And we'll come and back in open session after those two executive sessions are done.
May I just quickly ask for the record, my name is John Day, I'm an attorney for Mr. Piccarelli.
Uh-huh.
For the second executive session,
Right.
will that be for a strategy session among the board, or will that be for conducting negotiations with Mr. Piccarelli?
No, it's going to be collective bargaining with him, I think, right?
It's with Rob, yes.
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah, I was going out to get you.
Do you want to chat now, or?
We have a 7:05 meeting that's 20 minutes late, public meeting, and I'd like to take care of that now, and then I'd like to go to recognizing the upcoming retirement of Deputy Fire Chief Al Cunningham next, and then we'll go into a meeting with the committee. Okay. So we have a public meeting with respect to the application of Joe's Auto Body Service Corp., Joel Borghetti, for his Class 2 auto deals license on the premises located at 333 South Avenue, subject to receipt of the license fee and final inspection approval of the Building Commission Zoning Enforcement Officer. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Is Joel here? Well, we can vote in absentia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's quick.
And we'll let Joel know.
Yes, we will let Joe know.
Joel? They're looking for you.
Oh, he is here.
You've been congratulations.
Joe, yeah, congratulations,
Thank you,
Joel.
Joe. We just,
Why don't you go over to that podium there with your microphone? We just approved your license based upon, or subject to the receipt of the license fee and final inspection approval of the Building Commission and Zoning Enforcement Officer. But we did approve that based upon that. And do you have anything you want to say to advertise?
I'm sorry?
Do you have anything you'd like to say in order to advertise your auto body shop?
Yeah, there's no you use auto body, only the repair.
Pardon?
I know use the auto body.
Okay.
The name is Joe's Auto Body Service. I never use the auto body,
Okay.
only the repair.
Okay. Fine. Good luck.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
That was interesting. And now it's time for a joint meeting with the DPW Building Committee.
How can
Right. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Al, jeez. Sorry about that. We have something important to do here. Deputy Chief Al Cunningham is leaving us. I would like to read a proclamation. Whereas Alfred M. Cunningham is retiring from the position of Deputy Fire Chief for the Whitman Fire Department effective October 12, 2023, having served the town of Whitman for more than 28 years. And whereas Alfred M. Cunningham has served the town honorably, faithfully, efficiently, and with dedication, beginning as a call firefighter in 1995, then as firefighter paramedic in 1998, and lieutenant paramedic in 2009, before assuming the role of deputy fire chief in 2019. All the while carrying out his duties in a manner that is a credit not only to himself but to the town of Whitman as well. And whereas the valued services and untiring devotion of Alfred M. Cunningham have not gone unnoticed or unappreciated, and he will be sincerely missed by his retirement. And whereas the Board of Selectmen, on behalf of a grateful community, does hereby commend Alfred M. Cunningham for services rendered to the town. And now, therefore, the Board of Selectmen of the town of Whitman does proudly proclaim October 12th, 2023, Alfred M. Cunningham Day.
Guys, we're free cover concert.
And on behalf of its citizens, we'd like to wish Alfred M. Cunningham many years of good health and happiness in his retirement and any future endeavors he wishes to pursue. And we hereunto set our hands in town seal this 12th day of September, 2023, and the selectmen have signed this. Al. So on Al Cunningham Day, you should receive free meals in almost any place you want.
Free meal at the fire station, yeah.
Tony, you knew that this morning. Tony, you knew that this morning.
So I guess that being born in Boston and raised in Brockton doesn't qualify me as being a townie. But
No, it certainly does not.
no, but I want to say that
I was raised in Weymouth, and I found that out really quickly.
I've been here for more than 3 decades now with my wife Kate, who is a townie, my daughters Laura and Emma, and we've proudly called Whitman our home now for quite a while, and I'm very happy to be here. As far as becoming a firefighter, that took me a while. I had to pursue that for a while I lived in Brockton, and then after moving to Whitman, and I'm just very grateful and honored to have been part of the Whitman Fire Department. I've worked with incredible members throughout the years, past members and new members that support me here tonight, and I've just been very blessed to have been part of this department and serve the town of Whitman. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. Chief.
Chairman, you touched on some of this, but from Whitman Fire Rescue, I want to take this opportunity to thank Deputy Cunningham for all of his work over his career. For us to be successful in our profession, we need to have a strong family and strong backing, which without a doubt Al has. Deputy Cunningham worked tirelessly to develop this code enforcement that we now have in place in town. Without a doubt, Deputy Cunningham has made the town of Whitman a safer community, and for that we'll forever be indebted. We competed through the years, up through the ranks. I think we're tied 2-2 right now. He's winning because he's leaving. But we made each other better throughout, and he always strived to be the best he could be in the fire department. For that, we thank him. Personally, I want to thank him for helping me along the way, developing this program, which is imperative to this community. And I also want to wish Deputy Cunningham a long and healthy retirement. Congratulations.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the joint meeting with the DPW Building Committee with respect to their project funding options. Who's going to be speaking for the committee? A familiar face.
Thank you for having us. Over the last several weeks, actually over the last couple of months, we've been working through the bidding process for a new DPW. Numbers came in last month, and to say they were not what we expected would be something of an understatement. I prepared an outline, which I did email to the selectmen in preparation for tonight's meeting, and I'd just like to hit the highlights on the worksheet for funding. When we initially started down this road, we hoped for a building for $18 million. Town meeting voted an authorization to borrow. I believe it was $17.8 million. We had already appropriated $1 million for the feasibility study and the design, and felt pretty confident going out there we were going to do okay with it. If you turn to the budget calculations, our best guess right now, and this was as of August 17th when the low bid was calculated, our budget appears to be $22,186,000. Certainly a bit more than we had planned for or appropriated. We prepared an outline of the initial appropriations. In May of '22, we appropriated $1,098,000 for the feasibility and design. In May of '23, based on that feasibility study, we went to town meeting and the ballot and sought approval and received approval for $17,800,000 to build the project. That brought us to $18,898,100. With the bid at $22,186,860, I'm going to start talking round numbers. We're short $3,289,000. The folks at DPW looked at projects that we've either completed or are underway to the point where we're prepared to close them and look for potential funding to help us pay for this building. And what we identified was the remaining funds for the water main at $229,400, the remainder of the water meter project, $500,000, cleaning and surveying for the right-of-way, $69,000, cost for sewer main repair, roughly $15,000, and a generator surplus of $36,000, and the engineering that went to preparing for the force main replacement, $200,000. So we've identified $1,049,000 that can, with the approval of town meeting, be appropriated to help us pay for the costs of the DPW. Assuming we did that, and assuming that we use the ARPA funds that the town has that are discretionary, and the Plymouth ARPA funds that are discretionary, the town is 166,119. Plymouth is 583,881. That brings us to a shortfall of $1,489,000. There were two things that are driving these costs. Certainly one is this is probably the worst bidding environment we've ever been in for building a new building. So that contributes to where we are. But another factor that has really impacted us are soil conditions. When we started down this road, we did examine the site. We did test borings. We identified how deep we would have to go to put supports into the ground. One of the things we didn't do, because we didn't have the funding, and it would not have been the smartest thing for us to do at the time, would be actually examining the contents of the soil. Because if we did find something that was a problem, we would then be required to remediate it. So that was the last phase of the soil examination, and sure enough, we found some problems. There's lead in the soil. A lot of it is unsuitable and is going to have to be replaced. That simple process has added pretty much $2 million to this project. So where we stand right now, this is our third attempt to build the DPW since I've been on board. It hasn't improved with age, and we're at the point now where there's no more opportunity to say, let's wait and see. And every time we do, it winds up costing us more money. So what we are seeking from this board is consideration to increase our debt authorization by $2 million. There are other possibilities that we're working on that could ultimately reduce what we're going to spend. But if we're going to move forward with the project, we have to be able to demonstrate that the project has been approved and funded for the work that needs to be done. $2 million is what we expect provides us a little additional contingency because we still don't know for sure what we're going to deal with in disposing of the soil. But it would put us in a position to go out and finalize bidding and contracts. If we're able to reduce how much this project is going to cost us, the net result would be we would borrow less and end up spending less. But at this point, the committee is unanimous in its position that in order to move forward, we need that additional boost.
Okay, does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, Frank, as I understand it, regardless if, we're going to have to remove that soil and clean it up.
Oh, we're going to have to remediate.
No ifs, ands, or buts.
We
It
have
has to be done.
120 days
Right.
to come up with a plan
Yep.
for remediation. And one way or the other, we're going to do it.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
The request to increase the borrowing authorization by $2 million, would the intent of that be to put that additional $2 million, if you're not able to reduce the costs, on the taxpayers or the ratepayers? I think my thought goes a different direction on that.
I would like to have Mary Beth chime in on that.
So the 17,800,000 was done as a debt exclusion, which is in the taxes. The sewer force main that we're also doing is through rates. So I believe that the $2 million would be the same as the 17 million. The initial thought would be another debt exclusion. That's what we had mentioned at our,
And so you're basically asking us to put that on the special town meeting warrant? Is
Yes.
that the request? But you've also given us hope that you can cut that down.
Well, there are a couple of things we're looking at. Initially, we had hoped to use ARPA funds to pay for this. Unfortunately, this isn't one of, believe it or not, this is not one of the qualifying uses for ARPA. We do have, in your worksheet, you'll notice we are using $249,000 in ARPA, but that's discretionary money. That's money that can be used for any purpose. The balance of what we have is restricted and cannot be used for construction projects.
Okay, Sean and then Justin.
For me, I'm slightly frustrated because I remember just before we had the Springtown meeting, it was in April, late April, I sent the architect a couple of questions because I had some reservations about voting on this before we had the 100% design presented to us, because we were only at 50% at that time. So I asked them specifically, what relevant information will be included in the final construction cost estimate that is not included in the 50% construction cost estimate. And his response was, in this case, the 50% estimate is essentially as good as the 100% estimate. The estimate is detailed and the program has been well developed. So from my understanding, I thought, at least with the estimates they had in front of you, that's, but based on the timeline that you presented, the issue about the soil was known at that time. In early April, there was a deliberate choice not to test the soil until we got approval. But obviously with the understanding that there could be contaminated soil, obviously it was done.
We could not move forward with the testing because it was part of the construction project. And until we had funding,
That makes sense to me, but what doesn't make sense to me is some contingency that with contaminated soil, there should be some funds to deal with the contaminated soil. So how is that computed for?
well, what we knew was we had soil with some debris in it. We did test borings. We found various evidences of human life over the years, including soup cans, bottles, and other things that went down. Dan, you might remember, was it 11 feet, 12 feet?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And we knew that. And we knew that wasn't a problem because we could take care of that with aggregate. The content of the soil, the what I would call the environmental issues with the soil, were not something we expected. Because of where it's located and because of its proximity to a Zone 2 aquifer and a public garden, the standards for testing that soil are greater. And in doing that, we found that things such as lead, which we had no reason to think would be in the soil, we're not even sure where that came from. We are also seeking funding from the state for remediation, but I don't know if and when we'll get that. But I understand what you're saying, Sean. It isn't a let's hide this and do it later kind of thing. It's something that we couldn't do until we had the funding. And then, now that we know what we have two choices. We can move ahead, identify the cost, and remediate it as best we can, or we can stop the project and do the remediation. Those are our choices.
Well, it says here that the initial finding memo on soil was on the soils was on April 5th. But in that specific memo, did it make mention about some of the,
Yeah.
and that would be information that the architect would be aware of? Because I sent my email after that. So that's kind of where my attention lies.
We had a budget of,
Yeah, so in the original, the 17.8 budget, we had $300,000 for disposal of materials. Obviously, the excavation, that's part of it, but we had $300,000 for disposal. There was soil information for the design of the project that was available. We carried almost another $625,000 for foundation improvements. That's what the information we had at the time for the technical of what's going to hold the building up. And as Frank had said, if we couldn't find out what the soil was till we knew we had a project, because we're under that same mandate now that it has to be cleaned up. So we didn't want to have that mandate without a project. Obviously, that just would have posed a financial burden and with no gain. So there was a budget. It's just we found a lot worse, unfortunately.
Justin?
So I talked to the town administrator about this yesterday. My thought on this is there a way that we can appropriate the restricted ARPA funds that can only be used for COVID expenses, water sewer projects, or broadband infrastructure projects to the sewer force main project, and then use the rate increases that I believe the commission has already voted through to pay the additional difference here. It basically shifts $2.2 million from the force main project over to this project. I know there's some restrictions on using ARPA to pay down debts, and I don't know where we're at in the borrowing process for the force main because the project's not completed yet, so I don't think we've sought yeah, Mary Beth, you probably, do you have?
I don't finish that.
Okay, yeah, no, I know that's the hang up, but if we have not done the long-term borrowing yet, do we have an opportunity to intervene, pay down some of that difference, and then long-term borrow, needing less rate payer funds in the future that can be shifted over to this project?
Basically exchange debt.
Yeah, so we've got $2.2 million in ARPA that can be used for water sewer projects. It's just finding the right water sewer project to apply that to so that it minimizes the cost to everybody.
Okay, so I did look into that further today. And actually, Frank had mentioned between the two ARPA sources here, the town ARPA funds he has identified, which is some cash in the bank, and the Plymouth ARPA funds, which we would get from Plymouth County or reimbursed for. That's a total of $750,000 out of all of the ARPA money that we were looking to use towards this project right now. Originally, I was hoping that we could take $2.2 million, but like Frank said, there's the restricted bucket in ARPA funds and the unrestricted. So these amounts here represent the unrestricted money that we could take and still leave a little bit of unrestricted. But I did reach out to Dennis today just to find out on the sewer force main project. That was an article, I believe it was $12,898,000. Out of that, I wanted to know how much have we already gotten in reimbursements, requisitions that Dennis would have submitted for payments along the way. I think you said, Dennis, about 60%, so it's about $8,700,000 in that range. So we still have $4 million to requisition out. So I was thinking, and this is being very creative, this was without speaking with environmental partners or Mass Clean Water Trust. I did mention it to Frank. Would there be a way that we could do basically what you said and take the 2.2 and apply it to the sewer force main, meaning you would pay out 2.2 in payments out of the ARPA money, if the board was amenable to this, instead of submitting to Mass Clean Water Trust for a reimbursement, for a requisition. What that would do in the end is we would never end up borrowing the whole $12,898. It would be $10,698. And that difference there would be something that we may be able to put an article on to borrow what we need for this project and then just not fully borrow all of what we had put on last year for the sewer force main. It's very creative. I do believe that the sewer force main project is a type of project that is allowable, that we could use the restricted funds towards. So I've started the ball rolling here, but we need to check further with environmental partners and Mass Clean Water, just to.
But I would like to emphasize that what we're identifying is additional costs that we didn't anticipate that we're going to need to cover. Whether we're able to get creative and defer that cost, and essentially what we're doing is we're reducing the amount we're going to borrow for the sewer and increasing the amount we're going to borrow to the DPW, and it will end up being the same level of debt. It'll just be in two different classes.
Good.
I do just want to clarify that the sewer force main debt will be paid through rates, and the DPW debt is debt exclusion. So there is a difference there.
I believe we anticipated covering, Kevin, do you know what percent we were going to cover through ratepayers as opposed to raising?
I don't know the percentage.
I mean, it's all right now excluded debt, correct?
The 17.8.
So the excluded debt payment will be raised on the tax rate. However, if payments are made from the enterprise to service that debt, that ultimately ends up reducing the total burden to the taxpayer, much like you see when you do an annual budget and you have Article 2, and then you have the revenue that's raised in the enterprise that goes to reduce the total amount raised in taxes. But I don't want to confuse people by getting into this circular analysis. I think we need to recognize, or we need to go to the voters and taxpayers and say, we need another 2 million. We can't complete the project without it. And we may not need 2 million. We may need 1.5 million. My math says we need 1,489,688. However, nothing else has gone positive that way in terms of money. So I would ask for 2 million in order to have the cushion that's necessary for us to deal with
It's an awkward
it.
time to be asking for it,
I agree.
because we're also are faced with the increased costs for the Whitman Middle School, which was basically the reason for our having a special town meeting in the fall. I would really be happy if you continued looking at ways to cut down that 2 million somehow between now and September 26th, when we have our next meeting, because that's when we close the warrant.
Right.
When we have to actually make the decisions, and to continue with Mary Beth and Justin's creativity as far as shifting the burden somehow. It's going to be difficult enough to deal with the Whitman school issues, and I'm not. Well, we'll talk about that later. But we have. It's going to be hard enough to deal with that and to deal with this at the same time. So it'd be really great if you all could work hard over the next couple of weeks and see if it can be diminished, if that burden can be diminished somehow. I know you were asking us for some sort of
I'm not asking for a vote tonight.
right.
I'm asking you to hear us out and recognize what we think we're asking
We hear you.
for.
I mean, we don't want this building to go away. You know, this building has got to get done, but it's got to get done in a way so that some other things can get done at the same time.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll pass it around now. Just take the papers.
Okay, the next
can't sign
item
this, but you can
under
sign
new
it.
business is to act to fill the position of police sergeant from the promotional list received from civil service.
You can sign this way, but not this one.
Chief.
I'm sorry.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Board of Selectmen. At the last meeting, I requested that you call for a civil service appointment to sergeant with the retirement of Peter Aiken. That opens us up. It's going to create some movement within the department. And we do have an active civil service list that you've received with all the names of the candidates. And you also received a bio or on each one of them. And hopefully had a chance to review that. And my recommendation is to go in order of the civil service list as it stands. That's my request.
And you have a recommendation to fill the position.
Yes.
Would you like to make that recommendation?
Yes. So the top candidate is Officer Kevin Harrington.
Is there a motion to promote Officer Harrington?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh,
Mark, take it.
Discussion. And he was on the top of the list.
He is. That's correct. So I'll just summarize from his bio a little bit.
And he's all dressed up.
He's here, just in case.
Look, he's looking good. Yes. Anyone have any questions or comments? Other than congratulations.
Congratulations.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Sergeant.
So Officer Harrington began his law enforcement career in '86 as a member of the Braintree Auxiliary Police Department. In '91, he accepted a police officer position with the Harvard University Police Department and attended the full-time police academy there, and graduated February 14th of '92. While at Harvard University PD, Kevin was assigned to Patrol Division and obtained several certifications, including sexual assault investigation, field training officer, Cobweb Police Mountain Bike School, among others. He has his Master's of Science degree from Western New England University. He got that in 1998. And in 2005, he was offered a civil service position here as a permanent reserve intermittent, which he accepted. And in 2007, he came on as a full-time police officer. Most people know him as the DARE officer, and that's been his primary responsibility since coming on. And he's also a field training officer. He operates the Semlex SISM Peer Support Unit. And he recently became the handler for Whitman Police Comfort Dog, Nola, which she's more popular than Kevin now, which is hard to beat. So Kevin's been a team player. He's always risen to the task at hand. Whatever we ask of him, he does it to the best of his ability, and I think he'd be a fine choice here. And congratulate you, Kevin.
Congratulations.
There you go, brother. Good job. Does he get to keep the dog? Does he get to keep the dog?
It's a good-looking dog.
Oh, will he still stay at the school? They all they all love him. He's a good guy.
They're gonna have a ceremony. They're gonna have a ceremony. They're gonna be elected a sergeant.
Are we two go on?
Huh?
Shall we get going?
Yeah.
Taking the dog with him.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
The next item on the agenda is to vote to appoint the following to the Camp Alice Carlton CAC Committee: Sandy Cortez, John Galvin, Eric Joubert, Kathy Keefe, Ken Lytle, June O'Leary. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Next item, after the resignation of June O'Leary from the Whitman Historical Commission effective August 25th, 2023.
I'll make that motion with regret. I mean, she's been on that board, that committee for a very, very long time.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Act on the request of Donnie Westhaver to change the date of the Whitman Area Toy Drive Toll Booth fundraiser from September 9th to September 16th.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'd like to declare bikes not sold at public auction as surplus material for disposal. Anyone have a problem with that? Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of declaring the bikes? Right. Act to declare a 2012 Ford Transit Connect VIN number NMOLS 6AN4C2083629 as surplus material to be sold on Combis. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Yeah, I would have.
Any discussion?
None.
The next one have better luck with it than we did.
Okay. Oh, is that? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
It's great.
Aye.
Aye.
Act on request of Don Town Clerk Don Varley to issue a warrant for unlicensed dogs to the Animal Control Officer. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
I think I have to abstain.
Next on the agenda, we're passing over. the
We're
chief-
passing over, correct.
Passing over the chief plans to discuss.
Correct.
Okay, discussion, ARPA funds. Do you have some things to say?
On the ARPA, and we did touch base on the ARPA funds during our discussion on the DPW. Currently, we have not touched the Plymouth County allotment of ARPA funds. So we do have $2,150,147.79 in those restricted funds. And there are about 4 different categories in which you can use that money, such as a sewer force main project or water, but it's not for the new construction as we talked about. You can use it for technology. We can use it for ambulance or fire trucks, but we can't use it for police vehicles or DPW trucks, so it's very limited. We also have some cash that for federal unrestricted ARPA funds, a balance of $812,997.73. So the total of the opera funds available is $3,547,026.63. We did discuss using $750,000 of that in the unrestricted category tonight for the DPW. And that's where we stand right now with that money. There are some items that I have sort of earmarked for possible uses for the ARPA money, and that would be an ambulance of $537,663, DocuSign, which is a program that we'll be installing through the technology department so that you can sign things, warrants and so forth electronically. That would be very convenient when people are away or out of town or bad weather, couldn't get in. Some recorders, just the little recorders for the meetings, now that we passed that bylaw for all boards and committees to record their meetings. I put in approximately 1,500. A little camera, a camera of some sort for the library, for the parking lot, that has been requested. I just put in a number of $2,000 right now. And then there were a couple of other areas. The assessor salary had a shortfall from what was budgeted to what they hired the new assessor at, and that's a difference of $9,896. We find that the budget was so tight this year, we have no room or little extra fund to negotiate, and it was so difficult hiring for the municipal that they did hire above what was budgeted. And also, there's a shortage for the library part-time tech salary of approximately $12,000. And one other item is a good use for some of these funds is an audit that we're thinking. We've been approached by the town of Hanson to have an audit done. And I think that was discussed in years past, but not done. And our share would be $7,500.
Audit of the school system.
Of the district, right. Yep.
Right.
So those are some of the items that I was considering for ARPA.
Marette, does that eat up all the money that's there? We have what's left?
No, that doesn't. Now, it depends on, with the $750,000 that we earmarked, that would still leave $1,697,000.
And if we don't use it, what happens to it?
Oh, it would go back to the county. So
Okay.
we have to use that by the end of 2024, and then
Appropriate by the end of
Appropriate,
and it has to be
right.
expended by 2026.
Because I know that the fire department, we're going to go with one ambulance. Is it possible that maybe we should go with 2? Because the fact is, with Brockton being closed, they're traveling twice the distance and twice the time. Right? And I know that it puts a lot of pressure on the ambulances. Maybe we need to look at not purchasing 1, but maybe 2 or even 3 new ambulances.
No, I wouldn't want us to leave one penny on the table, that's for
Right.
sure. However, if we do come up with some creative ways to find money for the DPW, this money wouldn't be left on the table. Instead of 750,000, would be using 2.2, and that would use up most of the money. But I agree with you that we don't want to turn back any of this money, of course.
Okay. Anybody else?
I just, I like most of these suggestions, a lot of one-time expenses. On the salary pieces, I'm hung up. I think we should go back to town meeting, appropriate money from potentially the school articles that are being closed out or turned back.
And that's an option as well.
Early discussion on that. Just because we like to give town meeting the option to vote those lines, the salary lines. I think it's more transparent that way than using ARPA funds to make up the difference. But everything else I think makes sense. And then, if we can get creative using as much money as possible in the sewer force main so that we don't leave anything on the table, because if we don't expend it, it doesn't just go back to the county, it goes back to the U.S. Treasury. So let's spend it here.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, next item on the agenda is to vote to open the October 30th, 2023 special town meeting warrant and to close said warrant on September 26, 2023, which is our next meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
One item left, old business update on the Whitman Middle School project.
Okay, so yes, the chairman of the Whitman Middle School Building Committee, Fred Small, called a meeting for August 28th to have a discussion of rescinding the schematic design approval vote from August 15th. And after much discussion among the committee members with the OPM and the architect, the committee voted not to rescind the original vote of August 15th. There were 4 members who voted in favor of rescinding the vote. However, overall, that did not pass. And there's no doubt that a new Whitman Middle School is needed. However, at a $17 million increased cost from 72 to 89, the impact on taxpayers is significant. Some of the Whitman Middle School Building Committee members wanted to have the committee consider a 6 to 8 middle school without an auditorium, as opposed to a 5 through 8 middle school with an auditorium, which is currently proposed. However, this was not the consensus of the entire committee, so they're moving forward with the original plan.
Thank you. And I understand that Sean was going to present, are you going to present something tonight?
Yes.
Okay. And this is related to the school?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Be my guest.
Right in one sense.
After Sean makes his presentation, we can chime in on what Mary Beth has just said. Just wanted to give him a chance to get it off the ground.
There we go.
Or maybe not.
It's just a little slow.
Well, what we thought would make sense for us as a board and for the public is we've been working with a financial consultant to get some context around the debt that we're going to be borrowing, with the DPW, obviously, and with the middle school, and then with potentially Social Votech. There's a number of projects that are going to come in front of the town meeting and us that we really felt like we needed some context as far as debt and debt management. So as a board, it wasn't too long ago that we decided to implement some financial policy around debt management, financial policy in general, but one of the subsets of the financial policy was around debt management. I think in many ways anticipating all of this debt that we're going to take on. And one of the key policies that we, under the debt management, is the 12%. Specifically, it says excluded debt service should be less than 12% of the tax levy at all times. So our tax levy is about $30 million. So collectively, 12% of that is what we want to roughly, as a kind of rule of thumb. It's not hard and fast, and they're pretty clear about not making a hard and fast rule, but giving us some gauge so we have an understanding of, towns that implement these policies with the understanding that the policy is going to keep them on financial good ground, and the implications of potentially what can happen if you go over that. So the policy, I think, will be helpful for us to use as a gauge. What do you think, Paul? Is it going to work? So with the financial consultant, what we did was we talked about some of the projects that are that are potentially coming before us, and we also had them look back 20 years. This is still in development. This is just going to be a first pass tonight, just to give us some context and keep the conversation going.
Or maybe a first pass at the next meeting if we don't get that thing up there.
We'll see.
I don't see the HDMI, that's why usually I do.
Before the
How
meeting.
much more ARPA money is left to fix that?
I said technology.
Any monies in there for the shelter? They don't let you use it for the shelter.
It's so limited.
It's very limited.
It has to be COVID related.
Oh, there's nothing COVID.
It's on the computer?
Yes.
We had it up there earlier.
John will figure it
We
out.
had it up there earlier.
Remember what you used for an input?
I've got it up.
It's on the computer screen.
The screen from here, it's gonna go in a different, it's got a separate routing. It worked when we set it up.
You don't have to send it from the computer, like press a button on the computer?
I thought we used input B or C for the capital committee.
Just a suggestion.
Right, Fred?
Yeah, I mean,
It's usually, yeah, we use it at every meeting.
usually there's an HDMI
Yeah.
input, and I don't see it for some reason.
And I know we've ended up taking Dawn's computer and plugging that in directly.
Yeah. I think there's a computer plugged in directly right there.
See that?
Right, is the HDMI, yeah.
Screen, it's there over there.
Right.
I don't know what's happening.
So,
Yeah, we had it up there earlier.
I wonder if it's stealing the video to that. If
Are we on TV?
You have that on.
Should I take this time to thank the voters for the vehicle?
Yeah.
It'll take a while to shut down and shut off again.
Yes, Cal, I should take
Can't disconnect it from the cable and just put it on the projector?
Try to pull the HDMI out. Oh, wait, he's got it on his setup over there.
I don't put it to heat up the time. No, don't bother. It's like
I should have brought my sweater.
Are you cold? Yeah, it is a little. It is a little.
Oh, turn down?
No.
It's all right.
Right in my face.
Is
Okay.
Schultz?
Yeah.
Hoping they show this, they re-show this, they'll cut all this out.
Do we want to jump
It's
to
so live.
town administrator report? Or do you want to jump to town administrator report?
Put us on pause.
Sure.
Great idea.
While we're waiting, Mary Beth can do the town administrator's report. And then we'll come back to the Whitman Middle School.
Okay, so we do have a Board of Health update. Today, September 12th, 2023, the town of Whitman was made aware that a positive sample of the West Nile virus was collected from the southwest quadrant of town. We warn residents that despite the cooler evening temperatures, mosquitoes are still a concern. Simple steps such as wearing an effective insect repellent, wearing protecting or long sleeve clothing, mosquito proofing your home, and possibly staying indoors when mosquitoes are most active are key to helping avoid West Nile virus. So we just wanted to let the residents know. It was a sample. It was not a person was infected.
It was a mosquito.
It was a mosquito.
Okay, so-
But still, it was a positive test. Okay.
So it was on an animal? Mosquito bit an animal, you saying?
Nope,
just
just
the
in the
testing,
mosquitoes they
testing.
tested.
Oh, okay, yeah.
How's it
Oh,
show?
is that it? Is that it?
That's it?
That's the report.
the whole report,
Okay.
just that tonight.
Sean, is this something that could be put off until the 26th, when we maybe?
Yeah, I mean, the reason for us to talk about it tonight was to get the, I
Right.
mean, there's been a lot of conversation about it, but to
Right.
give some context around the debt.
Right.
And we had planned on putting it on the 26th as well.
Okay.
With another small presentation, nothing long, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
this
sorry,
didn't work.
I'm sorry that this didn't work out.
It's okay.
What, you still want to discuss the middle school?
Yeah, what I'd like to do is pass the gavel if I could to you, because I may be making a motion.
Okay.
If you recognize me, it'd be great.
Okay, I recognize.
This is very-
Chairman Kowalski, make a
This is
statement.
Yeah, this is very difficult for me. As you all know, I have been a school guy forever, on the school committee for 14 years. My son was on the school committee. My sister was chair of the school committee for a while. I've had some interesting meetings in which I went to, I can remember one in particular back in the 80s when I was teaching at night at Massasoit, and I couldn't get to the meeting before the town meeting that particular night. It was a joint meeting of the finance committee, I believe, and the school committee, and I couldn't get there on time. When I got there, I was told that they had decided to change the request to the town and to delete, I think it was 2 teams at the middle school, and to do something with the park school. Maybe it was to get rid of the park school or something. They just cut the budget. They cut the budget that had already been approved at an open meeting. And I had to announce that as the chair at the time. I had to announce that, and so I did. But I said, but as a chair, I have to announce that the school committee voted to do this. However, as a citizen, I have to say that I'm against it, and I talked for a while. Now, I was talking to a packed house that was filled with school people. So actually, I was talking pretty safely, and I said, we just can't do this. There's just no reason to do this right now. And the town meeting voted to not go along with what the school committee and the finance committee jointly decided to do, and they passed the school budget at town meeting. I felt really good about that. I gave sort of an emotional speech about how my daughter had done well there and in the school system and all of that. A couple of weeks later, there was a motion at the school committee meeting to remove me from chair because I had done that, and they had the votes. They had 4 votes. There was a 7-member committee. They were going to do it, except one of the people decided to say why she did it, and that gave me the opportunity to answer her. And I don't know if I've ever admitted this in public, but in between that town meeting and this meeting, I learned that I became aware that since the school department did not have another open budget meeting, they really couldn't reduce it. And so I used that information as if I knew it all along, which I didn't. And one person changed his mind on the school committee, so I was okay for a while. But I can recall doing that. I can recall stepping up for the school committee at the time, not for the school committee, I'm sorry, for the people in the schools who wanted more money. They didn't want the teams to be taken off. So I've always supported them. I am having trouble supporting what the building committee did a week ago. There was as I understand it, there was a recommendation, as Mary Beth just said, to cut the building down to having no auditorium and not having the 5th graders move there. And from what I understand, that would save the town about $20 million. fully understand. I further understand that the middle school children from Hanson who go to, the fifth graders from Hanson who go to the middle school experience the same middle school that our students in Whitman do. It's just in a different location. They're in a room. They don't move like other middle school students. They have one teacher, one. The only difference is the location and the fact that they spend 20 more minutes a day in school because of busing. So what started to sound to me like we were being asked to spend $20 million to have an auditorium and to allow 160 fifth graders in Whitman to get 20 minutes extra a day. And that just didn't make sense to me. Didn't make sense to me to spend that money for that. Furthermore, one of my warmest memories over the years in the schools happened at a cafetorium at the middle school. Not an auditorium, not a fancy auditorium, but it was a cafetorium. My daughter's first year in middle school was the first year that middle school opened, the one that can't survive now. We need a new school. We have to replace it. And it was her first year. We were concerned because she was a shy kid. And she had a teacher, though, in math that year who, I don't know whether he was a very good math teacher or not, but he treated each student as an individual. And anytime he saw anybody in the corridor, he would say something to, oh, Chrissy, you have a nice looking dress on today, or blah, blah, blah. His name was Mr. Malley. Mr. Malley. Mr. Malley died in the classroom that year, in her first year. And the teachers and students put on a play. They put on Oliver in order to raise money for a scholarship in Mr. Malley's name at Bridgewater State. And it was a remarkable performance. They made a lot of money. Mr. Malley in his death was honored. And I can still remember seeing Mr. Thrasher dance across the stage because he played Fagin. And he sang to the audience. And my daughter was in that play. You know, shy little kid, was in the background dancing. And the song that I can remember Mr. Thrasher dancing to was "Consider yourself at home. Consider yourself part of the family." And that's what that school felt like. Not only because of Mr. Malley, because of the other people at the school. It wasn't an auditorium that made it a school. In fact, my warmest experience happened at a cafetorium. So I would like to make a motion tonight that the Board of Selectmen vote, and I have no idea how you would vote, if they would vote to ask the school committee tomorrow at its meeting to reconsider reducing their ask and I know this is going to put things off, but I really believe that we need this building so much. We need to cut the costs down a lot and ask the school committee to reconsider putting the fifth graders there at the middle school and having an auditorium. If it's going to cost us as much money as I understand it's going to cost us. And what I'd like to do is to make that motion, that we encourage the school committee to reconsider tomorrow night their decision to do what they did last week. In other words, to listen again to the 4 people at that meeting who opted for a smaller building. It's hard for me to do this because I've never done something like this in my life, is to ask the schools to spend less money. But I am convinced that that building will be a good building, a good new building, even with those changes. And I think it would be the best way to go. So I'd like to move that the Board of Selectmen encourage the school committee tomorrow night to reconsider, even though I know it will put things off for a while.
Do I hear a second to that motion?
Second.
Is there a second? Okay.
Any discussion on it? Yes, John. I mean, Justin.
So, Yeah, Dan's sharing this part. I appreciate you guys appointing me to that committee, sort of as a late addition to replace our former chair. I voted to continue with the project as is, and I know.
I know you know. I know you
Yeah,
did.
I was not one of the four to ask to spend less money, and just want to explain my rationale. I think it was about 5 years ago. This board, prior to me being on it, so with only the two to my right as members of the board at the time, authorized the statement of interest to be sent to MSBA. We've been in this process for a long time. The middle school building committee was assembled. It's gone through a couple of iterations. Mary Beth was not on it at the time. I was not on it at the time. But they vetted the project over the last couple of years to put forward what they thought they needed, both for educational needs and what the town deserved, what the students should have in a modern building. One of those being the auditorium. And I just didn't think it was our place to step in at the 11th hour and change direction. This is whatever, the 11:59 now. We're getting really down to the wire with the school committee voting tomorrow. I still feel the same, that we've spent years vetting this project. I'd like to see it, the middle school building committee's vision go forward to town meeting with the work that they've put in so far.
Anybody else have any? Before I recognize Fred.
You want to?
Well, I mean, I understand. My daughter is 13. She goes to that school. My granddaughter is also 13, then 10 and 9. I want my children and my grandchildren to have the best of everything. But we cannot afford that as a town. I know the reasons that the soil is the way it is at the DPW because I'm a townie. I know that you said projected about South Shore VOTEC, but South Shore VOTEC is what it is. We are going to have to come up with money for that. And we have the most children going to that school. I can't look at voters that elected me here and say, because I want everything that they should have, because in my opinion, that's the world. But they have to eat. They have to have stable relationships, not fighting over money, not fighting over how bills are paid in order to get what they really need in life. And I agree with Carl. Any time I ever went was a cafetorium, however he said it, and the best memories were there. And I am not against the school being built. I agree with everyone. It needs to be built. And I just think we have to think about the people. And maybe a younger person can make the extra money, but we have a lot of elderly people. And these times are different than they even were a year ago. And I do respect all of the work that you've all done to create this vision. And I wish that we could afford the vision. But I think that Mary Beth has her job cut out for her with the creativity of finding the difference for the DPW as well. And that's just all I wanted to say. And I do appreciate your stance, though.
Thanks.
Anybody else on the board? Yeah, Sean?
This is difficult because, kind of like Carl, I have, strong feelings about schools. I'm a teacher. I'm a parent. I believe strongly, education would be my number one priority in many ways, personally. There's nothing more that I would like is for the kids of this town to have a new building. And personally, that's what I would vote for. But when I put my other hat on as a selectman, I have to slightly consider the issue, not slightly, I have to consider the issue as a policymaker. And as a policymaker, I think the hard question we have to ask isn't so much how much can I afford, but it's how much can we afford? And that's a much more complex question. And I think it'd be helpful, for the public to consume some of the information, both from the school's presentation on, affordability and that kind of thing, and also from our presentation with the help of the financial consultant, because these things are complex, and how do you decide how much the town should afford? You know, it isn't simply a 12% of the tax levy. I mean, that's part of our debt management, but it's also a consideration of the debt over the last 20 years and how things have kind of come to be this way and what we're looking forward to as far as taking on projects in the next foreseeable future, and how does that work as far as our finances and what can we afford. So I'm really torn, honestly. I don't know. Honestly, I can't imagine that our vote tonight is going to change their mind tomorrow. You know, I think they're likely going to support the committee as it's presented, and, you know, the rationale of giving it to the people to decide, I think, is a strong one. If the people want to support it at town meeting, they should have the right to support it. You know, I was at the last building committee meeting, and I did ask, you know, what happens if it did fail? Is it like, are we over and done with, or can you kind of go back to the voters? And the guy was pretty upfront about it. He said, you know, if for some reason it didn't pass, you know, you could have a chance to revise the project and go back to the voters. You know, obviously you don't want to go back to the voters a number of times, but this isn't the end all be all. And I think there is a strong rationale for giving the voters a chance to speak at town meeting. You know, we work for them, and I think the building committee did their job. It's the project that they're presenting. Even if we disagree, we present it to the people and they vote on it. You know, I think there's something to be said about that.
My comment before I get to you, Fred, is on your committee, are they all Whitman residents that are on the building committee?
No, sir.
Say, that's the problem I have. I mean, if I lived in, we'll say Hanson, or if I lived, you know, another town, I'd vote for the biggest thing going because it wasn't going to affect me. Why wouldn't you? You would think that the entire building committee would be members of who is going to be taxed on that building. Like at South Shore Votech, right? We get 8 towns. It's going to be 9. And so that's the members are from the towns, right? Because we're voting a regional. But this is not a regional. This is not a regional project. It's a Whitman project.
Correct.
And it's going to be a Whitman residents that are going to pay for it. And as Mary Beth, town administrator, has posted out there or put out there, is that it could be anywhere from what, $900 to $1,500, depending on what they choose for a new school for an increase in taxes.
The average home, and I don't have it, well, actually I do, 420,300
Yeah.
would be the first year actual. At a 30-year level principal would be 1,494.10, I believe.
Right. And there's a lot of houses, that brand new houses, that are 600,000, 700. I mean, it's going to really tax them out.
And let me, if I could say one other thing, the difference between, and you'll hear me say level principal as opposed to level debt, a 30-year level principal schedule, debt schedule, for 5.5% compared to a 30-year level debt schedule at the same 5.5% is over. If you went with level debt, which is another option, would be more than $19 million more in interest. So I asked the financial advisor from Unibank, and the district also uses the same financial advisor. They do use UFASI, which is Unibank Fiscal Advisors. And I said to our rep, Ben, is there any scenario in which you would ever choose a level debt schedule for a building project over a level principal? And he said, no. No, because the cost over the life of the debt is so great. So I do hope that if this does move forward, that the district works, you know, with the town to decide on the best funding option, because Whitman is paying.
All right, we're paying it, right. Fred.
Fred Small, Chairman of the Whitman Middle School Building Committee, 87 Hilltop Road. I want to try and answer some questions. When you asked me if it was a Whitman project, it isn't the fact that Whitman is paying for it, but under MSBA guidelines, the statement of interest came from the regional school district. The regional school district is the one who is running the project. They're the ones that formed the original building committee with folks that were voting members that were in administrative positions. That's the way the committee was formed. I was put on the committee, ultimately elected chair. That's what I inherited, was that.
Okay.
I'm just trying to go back and forth. Sean, you had mentioned, and Mr. Carroll didn't articulate what would happen if there was a no vote. You can go back. You have 120 days from the MSBA approval to go back and obtain a yes vote at a ballot box, okay, well, and a town meeting. But you can't change the project. The project will be what MSBA has voted on the schematic design. Now, what we had done on August 15th, and then the motion was to rescind that vote on the 28th, I believe it was. And that would have taken that vote away, and we could have discussed the options that we were listening to. And I know Mr. Galvin had made a motion for the 6 through 8. But before that could be considered, we had to remove that. By legal advice and legal counsel, we could do that because there had been no action taken at that time. They have submitted the schematic design to MSBA. So it could be argued that the school committee is powerless to do anything but approve what was already approved by the building committee. I don't know the logistics or the legality of that. But where action had been taken, that could muddy the water, so to speak. I was one of the folks that did vote to rescind it, one of the 4, so to speak. We are left with, what the project is, and to the best of my knowledge, that's what ends up going forward. But however you folks end up voting, and I would think most certainly, they would recognize and respect whatever you would like.
Mr. Galvin, that's good.
John Galvin, 41 High Street. As most of you know, I resigned from the building committee at the last meeting. My concern is, and I mentioned this at the meeting, that people out there think that there's 2 options to this. There's a 5 through 8 option, and then there's a base repair option. But there isn't, okay? There's a 3rd option, and the 3rd option is the 6 through 8 without the auditorium. And the problem is that the building committee, the school committee, this committee, none of us have the final say. The final say comes at town meeting. And lots of things can happen at town meeting. We've all seen it, okay? And the people need to decide what they want. We've gone through, I've been on the building committee for 3 years now, or had been on the building committee for 3 years. And there's been a lot of discussion on 6 through 8 and 5 through 8 and auditoriums. And back in January 24th, when we had our meeting and we decided what project we were going to go forward with, we had 6 options. We had 2 ad renovation options, and we had 4 building options. The ad renovation options are actually more than the new building options, so it was clear that those weren't going to be a consideration. And we went through the 6 through 8 in the auditorium, and 6 through 8 without an auditorium, with an auditorium, 5 through 8 with and without. And at that time, when we made that decision, the 6 through 8 without an auditorium was $63 million. The 5 through 8 with an auditorium was $73 million, and that was the cost to the town. So at that time, we're looking at $10 million difference between those buildings, and it was like $2.5 million for the auditorium. I actually, at that time, voted for 6 through 8 with an auditorium because I thought the $2.5 million for the auditorium was worth it. Now we're being told at our last meeting that an auditorium is going to cost the town almost $9 million. And if we went back to a 5 through 8, 6 through 8 without an auditorium, it could actually save us $25 million. But there would be a cost to that. The cost would be a delay. We'd have to go all the way back to the schematic design stage. That would add about $350,000 a month additional cost, or about $2.1 million. There would be additional design fees. There would be, so basically, it would be about over $20 million savings if we went to the 6 through 8 without an auditorium, if you factor in those additional costs. Town meeting needs to have the option. Town meeting needs to decide, okay? We've had 15 people make these decisions, and granted, they're very qualified people. Everybody on there is qualified. But before we made that decision in January, there were 2 separate polls that went out. We had 3 different public forums, and there was a poll put out at that point that was returned. About 100 people responded to that. The superintendent also put out a poll to the different schools within. So we had 209 from that. So altogether, there were 309 people that responded to the poll. 156 voted for a 6 through 8, and 153 voted for a 5 through 8. So even in those polls, the public wasn't in favor of a 5 through 8. And the scary thing about that, there was no price tags involved with any of that. So if you go to the public now and say, there's a $20 million difference between these 2 buildings, I think the public's going to have a lot to say about that. And I did resign from the committee because it's my intention to educate the public on that and do what I can in the next month and a half and let the public know that there is another option out there. The base repair option really isn't an option. It's $60 million to the town, and the MSBA pays 0 of it. So we've got to make sure this building gets passed, or we're not going to have anything. And I say let the people decide.
Yes.
Kathleen Otina, 344 Washington Street, also a relatively new member to the Whitman Middle School Building Committee. I just want to give a little information on how the vote proceeded from August 15th to August 28th. The August 15th vote was unanimous to proceed with option 9B. However, that was a Tuesday, and on Thursday, I was also at the Capital Committee meeting where 4 members of the Middle School Building Committee meeting. We didn't discuss what took place on Tuesday, but I've described it as furtive glances were shared. There was a real level of discomfort that the building had gone from $73 million to $89 million, and relatively new to the process, I didn't understand the impact of different aspects of the budget, how these ineligible costs were identified. It's not just the auditorium. The 5th grade is not ineligible. So I educated myself really with John Galvin's help quickly to come up with, oh, that's why it's ineligible. Oh, if we cut back this amount, it's now 100% eligible. So that's a long story to contacting Fred, our chairman, to say, as an individual member, I am uncomfortable with the vote and I think that we need to hit the pause button. And that's why the August 28th meeting was scheduled. And I initially voted yes for one motion so that we could open up discussion. But when, and we were in the process of discussing through Chairman Small's Robert's Rules of Order manipulations, it was a tough meeting. It was a very tough meeting because you don't want to win or lose based on Robert's Rules of Order. You want to have people have full and informed decisions. But we were at the point where the OPM and architects had given us options. They knew we were concerned about the $90 million, $89 million price tag, the $16 million jump in costs. And we were given 3 levels. Level 1 was basically to adjust contingency fees, and that would have saved $3.6 million. Level 2 was going to delete the auditorium, reduce the phys ed space, some of which is an oversized gym, some of it is a wellness center. You don't need to know the details. That's why there's a building committee. Reduce teacher planning spaces and eliminate outdoor storage, which apparently is crucial to the operation of a school. If you can't put outdoor activities in a storage facility, you're going to end up paying for them over and over again. So those 4 components, level 2, would have saved the town, or would have saved the cost of $14 million. Eliminate the auditorium, reduce the phys ed space back to MSBA standards, and teaching planning space back to MSB standards, BSA, and eliminate the outdoor storage. The level 3 was to change to a 6 through 8 middle school. And there was $1.2 million for some sort of target construction VE, which I don't understand what that is, but that was $1 million. Adjust to grades 6 through 8 with lots of assumptions was an $11 million savings. So if we enacted level 3 changes, that was another $13 million savings. There was never a motion to consider reducing the school. Although John Galvin did make a motion, it was ruled out of order because first we had to rescind. So there weren't 4 votes to go with this reduced cost building. There were 4 votes to rescind the August 15th. I was not one of the 4 who voted to rescind because I did not want to support what I saw John coming up with, as much as I admire John. I think we needed to have nuanced discussions, level 1, 2, and 3, not just get rid of 2 and 3 and have no other options. So it was a difficult decision. And at the end of the day, we did vote to stay with option 9B. Where are we today? We're looking at an $89 million exposure to the town, to the voters, and that translates into the $1,400 first year if it's level principal, $1,100 if it's level debt. I heard you, Mary Beth, say no one in the bond industry would ever go with that.
No, Ben, one person that I spoke
One
with.
person,
Our
okay.
advisor.
One person. But my position on that is today's taxpayers, I'm one of them, and I'm a senior citizen, we would be hit with the level principal of the biggest exposure to our tax increase. And 30 years from now, when I will be well over 100 years old, my final payment will be about $500. Whereas if we did level debt, I'd be paying $1,100 a year for the next 30 years. I believe there's some discussion to be had about having taxpayers 10 years from now, when the current 4th graders are then well into college, have them assume an equal share of the debt as their grandparents and parents are sharing. 20 years from now, in 2043, I'm going to be really old then, have that wave of taxpayers, young taxpayers, new homeowners, and older citizens as we all age, share an equal share of the debt and not impact the current taxpayers. And it's not just senior citizens who have trouble paying their bills. Young families who have just bought a house and have child care expenses or have children going to college, and I used to be a young family, so I remember those pressures. They have as much pressure on them for paying the bills as senior citizens, sometimes more. I'm actually financially, my husband and I, financially more relaxed than we were when we had 2 kids in college and a third one who, thank God, went to the military before he went to the college. So there are pressures on everyone in this town. But my point is, this is, 11th hour and 59 minutes. This is not the time to pull the rug out from underneath the middle school building committee. We have a town meeting scheduled on October 30th and a debt exclusion override, if approved by town meeting, scheduled for November 4th. Let the voters decide. I think that imposing, as interesting as some of the anecdotes are, and I have some of my own, and I had some concerns about this project as I with John. I've talked to John on a regular basis, so I understand there's some misgivings. But this is the project that the majority went with, and we don't have a chance to change anything between now and October 30th, so I would encourage the Board of Selectmen to move forward with supporting the opportunity to get a $45 million grant from the state. Because if we delay it, maybe we'll be able to come back, reconsider, and go back to them. But if we walk away from this opportunity the way that our neighboring town did many years ago, the MSBA will never consider funding a school for the town of Whitman, and that is a cost that we cannot bear. Thank you.
I have a question. I have one question, Fred. Why, or even to both of you, the committee, knowing that the increase in cost because of the upgrade that the building committee want, or some want it, with the extra large auditorium and all the different things, right? Knowing that that would put pressure for the selling of needing the project, right, to the taxpayers, why would you even consider that? It would be like me saying, geez, I want a Mercedes, but I can only afford a Ford.
At the time.
But I'm not going to go out and borrow for a Mercedes, and all of a sudden, they take the car away from me.
At the time.
Yeah.
When those decisions were being made, understand the numbers we were given was a range from 67 million to 73 million. Those were the numbers we were given.
But then they escalated.
But you could almost understand if it escalated a little bit. And received an email today, or last night I should say, from the project manager, quoting, different portions of meetings where things were said, yes, we had cost estimators, but we all should have known that this wouldn't be the final cost. Right. Okay, so if it's not going to be 67, I'm the optimist, I hear 67, so maybe it's 70, maybe it's 73.5. What we valued as a community, and we do value a gym and gym size, because that gym gets used a ton by the kids in our town. Go there on a Saturday, Whitman basketball, it's used and used and used. It's a nice thing. It's a good thing, and it's community involvement because it's more than just a school. But when we got to the 89 million, and by the way, we got the numbers at the meeting pretty much. So we were shell-shocked. At least I can speak for myself. Very surprised at hearing those numbers. You turn around from there, and you feel like you have a gun to your head. If you don't say yes, you don't have a project, because you have to approve the submittal to MSBA. I can tell you that's what was going through my head at the time. And then, and Kathleen wasn't the only one that emailed me. I received many emails from a few different members. Maybe we need to pump the brakes. Maybe we need to look at all of our options. Even if it is going to MSBA and saying, can you give us a 6-month extension so that we can resubmit something? Unfortunately, as I said, in the advice of legal counsel, the only thing we could do to start that process was to rescind that original vote. And we could have done it because there was no action that had been taken.
Right.
I don't know that the school committee is empowered to change the project at all. Now, they may vote no. They may vote to not put it forward. In which case,
right,
that would be a different conversation that MSBA would have to have with the district.
If the building committee knew because of the increase in size of, and some of the, I won't say needs, probably wants, the big auditorium and things like that, I mean, realizing that it was going to increase the cost, not knowing how much, but it was still going to increase it, and put pressure on the possible passing of the article for a new school.
But those quotes that we received, the 67 to 73, those were inclusive of that bigger auditorium.
And who gave you the quotes?
Those came from the project manager and the architect.
So they still your project manager and architect?
They are. We've signed a contract. We've got them for another 4 weeks, I think, or so.
Yes. Kathleen?
And thank you for indulging me. As I said, it took me a while to figure out the budget because it's not as simple as an auditorium, get rid of the auditorium, you save $8 million. I went through the 452-page document, the schematic design report that was submitted to the MSBA back after the January vote. And it's interesting to see how seriously these folks take their job, because they read the submission and then they submit a comment, and one of the comments deals with ineligible expenses. And it's not just the auditorium and it's not just the oversized gym. They're things that are currently ineligible, which I am sure our project manager and architects will be negotiating with the MSBA, are things like core academic classrooms. We were entitled to, I believe, 44 core academic classrooms with a minimum of 850 square feet. We only asked for 40, so we're asking for fewer academic classrooms than the MSBA will allow. So they're happy about that. But then we asked for an ELL, English Language Learner classroom for grades 5 through 6. Right now, they're not going to allow that. It's an 850 square foot classroom, like one of the 4 that we didn't ask for, but they're not allowing it because it's not core academic. We'll be negotiating through our professionals that this is part of the grade 5-6 core academic program for the English language learners to have a place to go. A second classroom is for the grades 7 and 8 English language learners, for them to have a classroom, 850 square feet, for them to go. Those are 2 rooms that are right now ineligible, but they may be deemed eligible. And that's why it was important for me to understand, why is all of this building now ineligible? Because it wasn't the cost of the project that went up, Dan. The cost of the project went up by $6 million. It was the town's share of the cost went up by $16 million. And it's because when you go from the Module 3, Preferred Schematic Report, to Module 4, that's when our professionals have to submit what's called a 3011. And that's when, with a fine-tooth comb, the MSBA will say, based on your project, and they don't do a 3011 for all 7 options. They do it for the one option you submit. This is the one that committee's voted on. So there are things right now that are identified as ineligible. The stage. If the stage is deemed eligible because if it were in a cafeteria, it would be paid for, then the argument would be, well, just because it's in an auditorium, could those square feet be considered eligible? So this is not the end of the discussion. This is maximum exposure. It's a long, detailed process. People have been at this for 4 years, and I've attended a lot of the meetings, and I've watched how the amount of commitment that people have made, and these decisions weren't easy. The vote back in January, as I recall, was Fred, because I would have voted with you, Fred. I was not on the committee at the time, but Fred was for a 5 through 8 no auditorium. I could live with the cafetorium, but he didn't win. Majority rules. This is still the United States of America. 4 other people voted for 6 through 8 with an auditorium. 9 people voted for 5 through 8 with an auditorium. And at the time, we thought, the voters thought, the people making the decision thought that maximum exposure was $73 million. It's the $16 million ineligible expense increase that caught my breath, not the cost of the project. And that's still a work in progress. But at this point in time, we have the project. It's been voted by the Middle School Building Committee. October 30th is coming up fast and furious. We don't have time to substitute a new project. And I would urge the committee, the Board of Selectmen, to go forward with the Whitman Middle School project as voted by the committee and see what the voters have to say. There'll be plenty of information out there and plenty of people lobbying on behalf of and against this project. And if it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. But if you don't give the voters a chance to vote on it, we'll never know.
Thank you. Rosemary, you want to
Just a clarification. Dan, just a clarification. The motion on the floor is merely to ask the school committee to think it over.
To think it over, right.
It's not to say,
No, yes or no. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, it was recognized by Dan, so I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that that's the case. So somebody did mention that the two schools were the same, and I don't know if you've had a performance, you've mentioned that that you use the gym, but I have a performing arts children, and they went to the middle school, and we had to do our concerts over in Hanson. So they do not provide the same. After school for performing arts, there was nothing for the children in Whitman, whereas Hanson had theater programs available for their kids after school. So maybe for your sports kid, that's great, but if you have a performing arts child, and I do, I mean, my son plays music out and about. I think just played at the Newport Jazz Fest. So he had no stage to play at in his own school. So he had to go over to another town in Hanson to play. So they don't have equal. Another issue is theater is also used a lot, and this is a topic we've had talks with parents with disabled children, with children with autism. Theater is used to teach children with autism sometimes how to respond to things, how to act, or how to feel. That's special ed access that maybe they don't. And we're talking about cafetorium. One of the conversations, I believe, Kathy, thank you for bringing that up, was that there's a classatorium. They want to use the stage as a classroom, and they're trying to determine if that's eligible, just like your cafetorium. So maybe you could enjoy theater at a classatorium just as much as a cafetorium. The hope would be that. But it isn't as equal for the two. There is no limited arts. When my son and daughter were in the middle school, there were less kids playing in band. There was less, and we have more students. So really opening that up so that our kids really do have that access to the arts and would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Just,
Is that it? All right, so the motion on the floor, yes.
just real quick, just to give you some perspective of our financial concern. And I agree with, and I appreciate the feedback, but just in the first year of the first year payment of the full bond, that's more than double. Just the school alone is more than double what our financial limit for total debt of the town should be. So if the rough guideline is 12% of the tax levy, just in the very first year, the middle school would be double that. Just the middle school, no other excluded debt projects included, no DPW, no social protect. So you can see from a big picture municipal finance perspective, it's a big deal.
It also is outside the levy, as far as that would go. I do like myself the idea of not paying additional money for a level payment over the term, to have it, declining interest, so to speak. We know what we're going to have needs in the future. And part of what we're seeing right now is the culmination of a multitude of needs all at once that are back to back to back. I'd like to see with proper planning, we've got Conley's not a brand new school. We've got Duval's not a brand new school. They did have nice renovations. Those are 20 years ago.
I was in the 5th grade.
Yeah, I mean, it was a while ago. We are going to have needs in the future. Now, I can appreciate wanting to pay as little as possible, but at the same time knowing that a declining debt also perhaps gives people a little bit more room sometime in the future. We have so many needs right now, and it's unfortunately, it's time to pay. But it's a question of how we pay and what we pay. That ends up being determined. And I think that the voters can speak, and they'll give us the direction, where they want to go. I know we went painstakingly to make sure that we held the town meeting in a time frame and in a time of the year where we can get maximum attendance. There are a couple of public forums that are going to be scheduled. There's a presentation going to be done at the senior center. So everyone's inclusive as to what the project is and what everything entails, so to speak.
Okay, thank you. All right, so if I stand, just to make sure I'm clear on this, the motion is is that this board is asking the building committee to reconsider their vote.
Asking the school committee.
As a school committee.
Good. Because the school committee is going to vote it tomorrow night, correct? So we're asking the school committee to,
The school committee will be voting to send forward what the building committee voted at our last meeting, which is the language for the town meeting, the language for the ballot vote, and what we're motioning, basically the project, so to speak, and also would contain a second motion that it gets to you folks within 7 days as prescribed by Mass General Law. So that's what the school committee would be voting on.
All right, so we're asking
and my motion was asking them to think about it.
to think about it. Okay.
Yes.
All right, is there a second to Kyle's motion?
Second.
All right, any more discussion? Yes.
Just the only issue, I think, as Mr. Small brought up, is that the school committee really doesn't have any action. They don't have any mechanism to change the proposal. You know what I mean? So for that
Well, let
reason,
them figure it out tomorrow night.
I'll have discussion on it and see how they're going to word it at town meeting.
no, I think if I understand correctly, the proposal that was already submitted to MSBA and has already been
Right.
taken action on, there is no changing that right now, other than if they chose not to put it on the ballot, I suppose.
That would be correct. So the choice is basically for tomorrow night, if the school committee pumps the brakes, so to speak, then it wouldn't come to you folks to put it onto the special town meeting.
And we're not saying that if you come to us with it, that we would not put it on the ballot. We would. We would. I'm just asking them to
Reconsider the
think things
cost,
over.
yeah.
Sure, yeah, and appreciate that.
Any further discussion? Any other questions? All in favor of Kyle's motion?
Aye.
Aye. 3 and 2 no? Okay, 3 to 2. Okay, Kyle, I pass the gavel back to you.
Okay, thank you. Motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. That's good.
We're out.